G'day, I am Mordechai Becher,
And I'm Yoshua Karsh.
and welcome to Two Rabbis and a Podcast. And it is almost Pesach. I'm hoping that you'll see this before Pesach, but it's relevant even if it would be after Pesach, because what we're talking about is something which is on our minds currently: bread. Bread.
It certainly is on my mind.
Absolutely. We are getting rid of bread. We are buying unleavened bread. We have an entire meal. Where we're focused on the unleavened bread, matzah, etc. I mean, bread, very, very central. And it's like Judaism has this really interesting fixation on bread. You could eat a 15-course Chinese buffet meal. And at the end of that, you would say a blessing called Borei Nefashos, which takes about 10 seconds. You have half a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you are sitting there with a siddur for 10 minutes saying grace after meals. It's extraordinary. You go to a wedding and the schmorg has got the fantastic looking sushi, and obviously you gorge yourself in the sushi to the extent that the sushi chefs behind just can't keep up with you. They're making it as fast as they can, right? But you know what? And after all of that, you can be stuffed to the gut. It's unbelievable. And you only say Borei Nefashot Rabot, a very small bracha, which Rashi in fact says when the Gemara says that you say after certain foods, Velo klum, nothing, Rashi says that refers to Borei Nefashos. Rashi and Brachos.
Relatively nothing.
Relatively. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, you have a slice of bread and you're sitting there. Are there three people who had bread here? And some people have wine. And then you are praying for 10 minutes. It's like it's not that it bothers me, but it's a little interesting.
The only bracha, maybe one of two, the only bracha that is overtly mentioned in the Torah
Yes,
is Birkas Hamazon.
you shall eat and be satiated, and you shall bless God.
Of all the brachos,
Yeah,
you know my thing. I have this thing, which is about the fly.
the fly.
Imagine you were at a convention of winged animals and birds, winged everything and birds. And you've got the eagle, you've got the peregrine hawk, you've got the
Condor,
stork, the condor. You have all these magnificent birds. And then in flies in the fly. And they all stare and wonder, how did he get the name? Out of all of us, they had a choice of all of us. And they looked at him and they said, oh, he's fly. So it's a similar thing. It just says uve rachta. That is it. It is the classic bracha. I know Birkas Torah is also sort of in there, but this is very overt. Uve rachta, and it's Birkas Hamazon.
But keep in mind the context there is it does in that very same chapter the Torah speaks about kilo ala lechem levado.
Yeah.
Not by bread alone does man live, but by all that proceeds from the mouth of God. And so bread is singled out there by the Torah as the what we call in English the staff of life, right? And it's also interesting. Societies all over the world have some form of bread. Could be chapati or naan or pita or lafa, right? Or there's many types of incredible variety of breads around the world.
Yeah,
right. And there's something about it. And by the way, already back in Bereshis, Genesis, when Hashem tells Adam, God tells Adam, he says, by the sweat of your brow, you shall eat bread. It's type of interesting, right? It says it's in Bereshit Genesis 3:19 that he's saying because you did this sin, you now will eat bread, but by the sweat you'll have to work for it. So it's interesting, the Gemara actually says that when Hashem told Adam that from now on you're not going to eat from the fruit of the trees anymore, you're going to eat from the grains and the grasses and the herbs of the field. So the Gemara says that Adam started crying. It's Gemara in Pesachim 118. He started crying and he says, "Shall I and my donkey eat from the same trough?" Like he says, now I've been reduced to like grazing like an animal. And Hashem said to him, "No, no, no. You'll have to work hard for it. You'll have to process it by the sweat of your brow. You will eat bread." That's when Adam is okay. It's like, right? Nacha daito, right? Nitkarara daito. He became comforted. So the Maharal and the Shalah and others explain that the idea is that of all the foods, the human being, what is the food that represents human ability, power, greatness more than any other food? It's bread. You know what I mean? The whole system of agriculture and then the harvesting and then the winnowing and the threshing and the grinding and turning into flour and then letting it ferment and become leavened bread and baking it and the whole idea of use of fire to make food. This is a exclusively human thing. It's exclusively human, right? And there is no animal that uses fire that does all the preparation. So it may be the quintessential, I love that word, the quintessential.
It is a very good word.
That's the quintessential. Maybe La Quinta Inns could use it in their advertisements.
I'm sure they do.
La Quinta Central Hotel. Yeah.
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
So the quintessential human food is bread. Now that represents, and if you look at bread and someone shows you wheat, someone shows you bread, say this is this.
I think Rabbi Akiva might have been involved in a conversation like that.
Awesome. Yes, that's right. That's the Tyrannus Rufus says to Rabbi Akiva, "What's better, deeds of God or deeds of man?" Rabbi Akiva gets a stalk of wheat and a piece of bread. He says, "You tell me which is better." Now, even if you're a complete vegan, right, and you got a naturopath, you don't eat the wheat like that, right?
Yeah.
So what's Rabbi Akiva telling us? What's he saying with this? I think he's saying is that obviously God could create a more perfect world, but he created a world that's designed to be perfected by the human being.
He was asking about bris milah, or he was hinting about bris milah, about circumcision.
Absolutely.
Baby's born, isn't he born perfect? Why do the Jewish people think you can make it better than God himself made it?
And that's exactly what Rabbi Akiva is responding. God created the world so we can make it better. Just like turning wheat into bread, and it's quite extraordinary.
Did you ever hear that Tyrannus Rufus was a Jewish apostate? Did you ever hear anything like that?
I have not. No, I have not heard that.
Okay, just throwing it out there. I think I heard it one time, but I don't know if this is true. I
could look into that.
Okay.
So in any case, maybe that explains why we see a meal that doesn't have bread as not like a true meal. You're just grazing. I just, by the way, a little rant, if I may.
Yeah, please do.
I think at a lot kiddushes and schmorgs, there should be signs that say no grazing, meaning take your food and leave. Back off and let other people get to right. It's really something which I remember asking. I was at a Pesach program one Pesach at a hotel, and I was up in the room. I was contemplating going down to Kiddush. My son Arya came into the room. I said, "What's it like a Kiddush?" And he said, when they push the sacks of rice off the United Nations trucks in Somalia, the crowd around there. I said, yeah. He says, that's what it's like. So, okay.
Do you know, I also have a tip for kiddishes, and that is if they're serving beef jerky, do not take that beef jerky during the kiddish unless you want to just be sitting alone and not talking to anybody. Because there is no way that you can talk. You have to keep on chewing with the beef jerky. It happened on our trip to India. We had beef jerky for our
Really?
kiddish. Yeah, we were in down, in
Bombay?
no, no, we were in the
Oh, Kerala.
yeah, we were in Kerala for
What
Shabbos.
island was that? Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and amongst the Indian foods that we had were beef jerky,
A
which
little
was
offensive to the Indians that we had so much beef. But anyway, yeah,
I know Mumbai we couldn't have done it,
that's
but
good.
for some reason in Kerala we're allowed to do it. But I could not talk. I didn't want to miss the opportunity of having it, so I stocked up a little bit on it, and then I realized I had to like find a quiet place where nobody would see me, so that I didn't have to talk, so I could eat it. So I'm just saying, if you see the beef jerky, you're not talking to anybody for the rest
That's
of
a
the
good tip.
kiddish.
That's a good
Yeah,
tip.
there you go.
So good. If you're antisocial, that's a good thing.
That is, yeah.
So basically, I think we may have an idea of why bread is so important in the Torah because it is the exclusively human food. The way it's created, the way it's made, the idea that human beings are told by the sweat of your brow you shall have bread, that will distinguish us from the animal world. We take the world, perfect it, change it, refine it. We don't just take it as is. Okay.
Now, what about wine? Would you put wine in the same category as a drink version? Because you do need some kind of human. I
Mm.
mean, I guess
To
it
some
could
degree.
happen by accident, but
Oh
it
yeah,
would
it
be
does. Things
I
ferment.
it could happen by accident, I guess.
I
You're
did
right.
read that
Bread.
sometimes
It's
grapes
not
can ferment. Like if it's broken, if a grape the skin is broken, it's on the vine, and yeast gets in, spores of yeast get in, it actually can ferment on the vine. And I think I read a phenomenon of drunk flies.
seriously.
Yes, so
That's our second mention of flies.
that's correct.
Somebody might think this whole episode is about flies.
The and actually animals in the wild can sometimes get drunk from fermented fruit.
That is, yeah.
Some would
So,
have to
okay.
avoid a drunk elephant would be something to be avoided, I would say.
Very avoided.
Yeah,
Very, very avoided.
yeah. It is type of interesting, by the way. The fly also is mentioned as one of the idols of the Canaanites.
Baal-Zevuv,
Baal Zevuv, Lord of the Fly,
Lord of the Flies.
which is where the book title came from.
Beelzebub.
Be exactly
Beelzebub.
worshipped by devil, satanic worshippers, etc. I remember Reb Moshe Shapiro saying something about that the fly thrives on decay, things falling apart,
Interesting.
as does the evil inclination. The good
This
inclination
really has become, I think
is
we
unity,
could
is things
bread
coming
and flies.
together,
Nice.
right?
That is nice. I like
Fly
it.
is things falling apart. He pointed out something amazing. I'm sure you heard as well that the word for fly in Hebrew, zavuv, is is the letter zayin veit vav veit, zayin beit vav beit. The word for good is tet vav beit. Tet is number 9.
Yeah. Oh,
Replacing
Zion Bays.
replacing the tet in tov goodness is zav of the fly. Now, what
Yeah.
Moshe pointed out is that tov appears in the Torah. The day that it doesn't appear in creation in Genesis is
Yom Shishi.
when there was division, when
The
the
second
water
day.
above and below was division, second
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
When does it appear twice in the Torah? On the third day, when things come back together with the
Nice.
cycle. He
So
said
that's Tov. Tov is when it
things
comes
coming
together.
together. The only
Nice.
time it says lot of, not good, is
When people are not together.
not to be a lot for a man, not good for man to be alone. So he's saying
Nice.
tov is things unifying to produce. Now
Nice.
it's
I
interesting.
like
The
that.
fly,
Yeah.
instead of a tet, the letter tet, which is nine,
Yeah.
right? It's got zav. A zav is a man with some type of venereal disease, an
Right.
impurity that makes it prohibited for him to unite with a woman.
And it may even be an indication that he can't produce proper life-giving energy.
Correct. Exactly. So that's where
I like it.
it's
I
amazing.
like it. I
Amazing.
like it. But when I was I was on one of my pastor's trips, and at one point we were at Qumran, and at Qumran they had these like large, um, uh, like almost like flags that come down. There's a word for them. These long things that come down. Anyways, it had various stages of Paleo Hebrew. Paleo Hebrew. So I was surprised because up until then, I thought that before Ksav Ashuris, before the Assyrian script, there was something different that we called Paleo Hebrew, the earlier Hebrew
Katav
script,
Ivri
Ksav
Yashan.
Ivri, yeah, Ksav Ivri.
Katav Yashan.
But apparently, there wasn't just one. There wasn't one stage. There were several stages.
Yes. Go on.
Several stages of Paleo Hebrew. The original ones were almost like pictograms. There you go. Like the Aleph might have looked like an ox in the beginning, and the
Well, this is
Nun looked like a snake
backwards.
or something.
Yes.
And then they sort of change as time goes on. So there were really several stages of it. And so I commented to our guide. I said I never heard about that, and he said there's a good exhibit about this in the Israel Museum. You should go to it. So after the tour was over, I spent like another week or so hanging out with my children and different friends and just being in the land of the Holy Land. And I took a half a day and I went to the Israel Museum and I went to that exhibit. And it was very informative. Right next to that exhibit was an exhibit of idols that they had found in Eretz Yisrael that date back to Canaan.
Ah.
And they had all these these were little. They had these little idols there. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a Baal Zavuv.
Ah.
So, I
Boy.
mean, it is fascinating. I mean, you hear about it, and there's this weird fascination that I think a lot of us might have because you hear about it, you want to see what the thing was that such a big deal was made out of. The thing was, it was low. The actual exhibit was lower, so I had to bend down.
Ooh. Ooh. Not good optics. Oh. Oh.
I had to bend
Oh.
down in order to see it. And then I go, what am I doing?
Well, actually,
Only
it's
in the
interesting.
Israel Museum.
The Talmud says, the Gemara
Yeah,
says
yeah,
that one of the things that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, looks like is the fly. Right? The Gemara in
yeah,
Brochus has two opinions what it looks like. The fly. So the fly is because one aspect of the evil inclination is pirud, decomposition, things breaking up, breaking apart. This, by the way, this is an amazing book. It's called Sefer HaKtav HaIvri, the book of Hebrew by Ada Yardeni, and it's got just like every.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Oh my
Look at that.
gosh, it is
Yeah.
full of. I
Yeah.
mean, it goes all the way to modern day fonts invented in Israel, and
Uh-huh.
every
Cool.
aspect of Hebrew is phenomenal book. It's got
Cool.
good real estates right here. I had to sign
Uh-huh.
up to get it, but nevertheless,
Okay. I'm
right.
glad I gave you an opportunity to take that puppy out. Blow off
Getting
some of
back,
that dust.
getting back to
Yeah.
the other image that the Talmud gives for the evil inclination is wheat.
Yeah. Nice.
Wheat. And it says
Nice.
that the child, it's only when the child eats wheat, can eat wheat, is capable of eating wheat, that its waste product is now considered to be stay away from it when you're saying something of holiness, etc. Right? It's not just because of the smell.
Right.
Right? I think it's because we may represent another aspect of the evil inclination, which is human power, right? Our ability, because that's a double edged sword. our power to perfect the world is also, in some people's minds, just our power.
It's one of the opinions in the Gemara about what the Eitz Hadas, the fruit of the Eitz Hadas Tovara was.
Was wheat.
One opinion is that it's wheat.
Yeah, exactly. Which ties into maybe a little bit of an interesting. There's a book here which I have called 6,000 Years of Bread. It's Holy and Unholy History by a fellow by the name of H.E. Jacob, who is a Holocaust survivor, who was a self-taught. He was an autodidact, I think is the term, and anthropology and history, and he wrote all about bread.
I know there's no reason for you to remember this, but I actually called you about sourdough bread, which we're going to eventually talk about, being from Egypt. And you said to me, I happen to be reading a book about bread right now. That book. There it is.
Right.
There it is.
He says, he points out, historically, people, most of the world were eating flatbreads and porridges. Flatbreads and porridges.
So they're getting their wheat. They're just not getting it.
That's right, exactly.
Like we do,
exactly.
Typically.
And he says, now, interestingly, there was barley, and there was the in Egypt they had a four-road barley. They had something called Egyptian emmer wheat. Okay, but in any case, he says that became like the king of grains, and he says that people would pray to rivers. You know what I mean? The Rhine, the Rhone, the Euphrates. There was no river that people prayed to more than the Nile. Right? They saw the Nile as their great father, provided this fertile silt to Egypt, interestingly, and brought life. And its waters would swell in June. Okay, and they even had a Nilometer, which was which you can
seriously.
Yeah, the Egyptians had it. It was a stone post. You can still see it with marks of how high.
You actually saw it?
Yeah. And so it's interesting. The Egyptians he attributes to the Egyptians the wisdom of bread. That is to say, porridge and flatbreads and porridge remain the menu for many centuries. But he says, Pliny the Elder says, the Romans lived on porridge, not on bread. The Greeks ate their bread in the form of flat cakes. The Germans only ate groats. The Slavs had kasha, etc. The Assyrians had flat barley cakes. But the Herodotus, Greek historian, says the people who did everything in a different fashion from ordinary mortals were the Egyptians. Other peoples were afraid that their food would decay. The Egyptians set aside their dough until it decayed, and they observed with pleasure the process that took place. That was the process of fermentation. And they were actually the people who were the experts at creating bread, creating what we call sourdough, right? It's interesting. He says even the Egyptians, the ancient name for the black earth of Egypt was chemia. This is from Plutarch.
Oh, like chemical.
Chemia. Well, interestingly,
or alchemy
is where the Arabic word alchemia comes from.
Alchemy.
Alchemy, nice. Where chemistry comes from.
Nice.
But not only that, what does the Torah call the land of Egypt? One of the names for Egypt, Eretz. It's B'nai Cham.
Cham. Yeah.
Chemia.
Nice.
Soil.
And also lechem.
Lechem.
Do you think it's related?
It's very possible. He claims that it is related. I cannot tell you for sure. There is in the
Those self-taught guys, you cannot always be sure when they say something.
There is, in the etymological dictionary of the English language, they trace alchemy to the Old French alchemy from the Arabic alchimia, from the Greek chemoia, from the writings of Diocletian, all means alchemy. And maybe, it says, from the old name in Egypt, Chemia, land of the black earth, found in Plutarch.
How do you like that?
So I would compare Cham to Chametz, the Ketava Kabbalah. The Ketava Kabbalah of Yaakov Tzvi Meckelberg, he actually says that lechem comes from the word cham, which means heat, that which is warmed and heated and baked.
Oh, nice.
But it may have multiple sources, but it's really tempting.
Now, so now that you see this information, because that was why I called you years ago. My son Moshe and I were learning about chametz and stuff, and we wanted to understand sourdough. And in that brief thing about sourdough, it mentioned Egypt, and then that's why I sort of called you, because why isn't this mentioned as one of the reasons that we eat matzah?
I think it's an interesting question, because there's two distinct issues. You could avoid chametz the entire Pesach and also not eat matzah. There's a mitzvah to eat matzah. The mitzvah to eat matzah is related to the food that we ate as slaves and to the coming out of Egypt in our rush and so on and so forth. It's the prohibition of chametz is like an independent idea. And the prohibition of chametz is almost like leavened bread represents Egyptian culture. Stay away from it.
Yeah, so why don't they say that? They never say it.
Well, who's they?
And, I mean, they would be any Rishon or Achron that has been.
I feel otherized.
But I'm saying before you. I mean, there aren't, and by the way, you can have Chag Pesach and Chag Matzos. You've got both of them. Chag Pesach, you're shechting, you're slaughtering the lamb. Part of the message that's being sent is you're slaughtering the gods of Egypt. And when you put the blood on the doorpost and you're leaving the culture, the gods of Egypt, the Egyptian culture behind. And you're not eating chametz, you're only eating matzah. So in that way, you're denying that aspect of Egyptian culture. Somebody would have wanted to say something like that, you would think.
I think the Zohar says something like that. I haven't seen a lot of it in other sources, but it really, to me, and it's interesting. This is John Cooper, who's a historian from Oxford, has a book called Eat and Be Satisfied, which is a history of Jewish food. In the introduction, he calls the Jews a gastrocentric people.
Well, my center has been definitely affected by our
and he says that
food.
The Israelites probably learned the trick of preparing leaven from the Egyptians. The substance called seor was probably flour diluted with water left to go sour. Pliny assures us that all means employed by the ancients to render bread savory and light, this is the most simple and easy. Noam Jasny that little, if any, bread was leavened in Italy and in Greece when the Christian era started. The leavening process was something that was really heavily associated with Egypt. And it's type of interesting. It could very well be that maybe the fact that we stay so far away from chametz, you can't have it in the house, you can't own it, you can't get benefit, right? You're not supposed to. There's the vast majority of our offerings in the temple were not supposed to be chametz.
Yes,
there are only two, which, right? So it is type of interesting, right? So the fact that we stay away from chametz, maybe that's it. There's a beautiful line.
But it would be so that is something that would be so low-hanging fruit to talk about.
I don't know why. But we have
Lora Isi Ain't Oraya.
First, folks, you heard it first here.
Yes, Mordechai wants to take credit. I'm going to give him the credit.
I said
for
us.
No, you could take it.
It's interesting. In his 6,000 years of bread, One of the
Yeah.
things he points out is that the word taxation was not something in Egypt. What the
Mm,
way you paid for your existence was primarily through forced labor. Forced
mm,
labor. That was the primary way, and the tax rate basically was based on the size of your harvest, how much you'd have to
mm,
work, how much you'd have to give, and it says the grain was given into Pharaoh's treasury, and in Pharaoh would give out bread to people.
This was by Yosef or just always?
It sounds like him always, but
Uh,
he says every Egyptian lived in dependence upon the king, who had to give life to every Egyptian. This fact was so obvious to all that no one felt spiritually oppressed by his serfdom. Personal freedom had not yet been discovered. Personal lack of freedom, on the other hand, freed each individual from worry about his food. You know, when you read what the Jews complained about when they were in the desert, we remembered that we ate everything for free in Egypt.
yeah.
We were given stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the price of being given food is that you're a slave. You don't have personal freedom.
But he's suggesting that that wasn't something humans knew about
He's saying it didn't seem
freedom, the value of freedom. They just saw being held uh, as a servant. They saw that as a
that's
step up.
normal.
It's like a government job. You hear
It's
people talk about
it's
government
life.
jobs
That's
like that.
normal.
Yeah.
Normal.
Hey, I got a government job. I'm set. I'm
It's
set for
like
life.
that old Greek. It was a Greek joke, I think it is. Old Greek joke about this fish. Did we? I think we may have mentioned it once before. This
Probably when you were in Greece.
elderly fish who had been actually
Mm,
out. He'd been actually fished by fishermen. He was out of the water twice, three
mm.
times, and was able to wiggle his way off the boat back into the sea. So everyone, he had scars all over him. He was very well respected.
They had street cred.
He's swimming in the water, and there's two young fish
Mm.
swimming towards him in the ocean. And the old fish says, "Morning, boys." And they say, "Morning, sir." He says, "How's the water today, huh?" And he swims on, and once one of the young fish once says to the other, he says, "What the hell is water?" You know,
Yes, you take it. It's like air, I guess.
that's
You
it.
take it for granted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, what's water?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
knew what it was. He'd been
Yeah.
out. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So sometimes you got to be out in order to know.
But then that makes, here's another thing. We are just going from one to another, because then the notion of how problematic slavery is would have to have been taught to people. In other words, the lack of pain and suffering that comes from being given, terrible amounts of work, avodas perach or something, that I think everybody could understand. But the
Yes,
notion of freedom, it could be we sometimes ask, uh, they just traded one form of slavery for another. They were slaves in Egypt. Now they're slaves to Hashem. Hashem says it overtly several times in the Torah that that's what happened. So in a way, we didn't benefit. We hardly benefited. That's an initial question before you give the answer. But it could be that they never even knew about the concept of freedom as a concept. They obviously, there are some people that weren't slaves, but they didn't know it was something to aspire to. Like in America, it's one of the great aspirations, freedom.
sure.
And they may not have even had that. That's awesome. That is
And
an awesome thing to consider.
and this guy points out, Jacob, Herman
Yeah,
Jacob, that
yeah,
that bread was more than just Egypt's principal food.
yeah.
It was almost like a cultural unit and a unit of measure. You know, you'd count wealth by the number of breads, right? You know, the flour baked in the oven was almost like a currency. It's just like fascinating. There's great Egyptian paintings of tomb paintings of baking of bread by the Egyptians. You know, it's but yeah. in the Book of the Dead. I am a man who has bread in Heliopolis. My bread is in heaven with the sun god. My bread is on earth with Keb. The bark of evening and of morning brings me the bread that is my mess from the house of the sun god. Right. So yeah, it very much. Um, and Hashem's interesting because we now, instead of having bread for free, we got bread for free for a while with the man.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, mun, you're going to have to talk about that, how mun is bread in a minute. But go ahead. Yeah.
But Hashem was wanted to wean us away from that. We would come into Israel, and he was saying the ideal is not man. Man is not the ideal. The ideal is to plant and to harvest and to bake bread and to work. That's the ideal, right? So to some degree, to seek as an ideal living off, we say in benching, in our grace after meals, one of the things we say is don't bring us to matnat basar v'dam. I don't want to live on the gifts of people, right? We want to live right from Hashem, and we want to earn our keep. And of course, the whole of Judaism is based on the idea that humanity is created in a free will system so that we can earn our goodness, earn our keep, not just have a handout, not just have social welfare, etc.
But so two things are coming to mind. One of them is because I had been thinking about this earlier. Do we have to then understand that mon works like wheat? In other words, that it is leavened,
Hard to
or
know because the word lechem can apply also to unleavened bread.
Yes, that's
We
true.
make the blessing on matzah,
Yeah,
lechem in aretz.
yes, we do. Yeah,
Right. So it could
doesn't have to be.
equally
Yeah.
refer. No, so it's not. That's not.
So
Not
one other thing there's this I had mentioned to you the earlier before we got on about there's a TED talk um called The Making of Bread or the History of
yeah.
Bread with this guy Peter Reinhardt. So I think he makes this awesome comparison between the making of bread and God's original making of the human. That the human is it's earth and water, mixed together. It's clay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the breath of life is poured into him. V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chaim. So, and he was saying that when you put when the reason that yeast, it's called a leavening agent. It originally comes from that word to enliven, to bring something to life. So when you have a dough, you initially have this dough, and then you add the yeast element. You are mimicking Hashem breathing into the nostrils of this clay, the breath of life. That's what he wanted to suggest.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Bread has so much symbolism in it as well. Interesting. Rabbeinu Bachai in Kad HaKemach points out, yes, we hold the bread with our 10 fingers when we make a blessing. The blessing over bread has got 10 words.
Yes, we use it to count. You could use it to count for a minyan.
Yes. I usually use to be or not to be. That is the question. Which people
makes perfect sense for doing it.
Right. But he says, why 10? Because there's 10 mitzvot.
Nice. I'm going to do
regarding
that.
bread. There's don't plow with the ox and the donkey together.
Yeah.
Don't mix the seeds.
Yeah.
There's leket, shikha, and payah. Leave the corner of the field. Don't collect the sheaves that you forgot. Don't collect the stuff, the gleanings, like shikha, payah. There is truma, which is given to the kohen. There's meiser rishon given to the Levi.
Nice.
There's meiser sheni, which is taken to Yerushalayim and eaten. There is meiser oni, which is given to the poor, and there's challah from the dough. So there's
nice.
And when I was just thinking of that when you said it's almost like a human creating a human. It's like the human's got 10, the 10,
10, yeah.
like the Ten Commandments. We spoke about a while
Nice.
back. Of course, we have
Right.
613, but I'm saying the 10,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Nice.
and then you got the Ten Commandments of bread. It's like very interesting. Um, and yeah, so
Also, just a related thing, but it's not 10, it's 11. The first 11 steps of the 39 forbidden malachos, creative work on Shabbos, are sometimes um, described as the order of making bread.
the Dura de Pas, yeah, the
Siddur
order of
de
making
Pas.
bread. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be a big chunk of the creative work that we are refraining from
So, yeah,
when we make Shabbos.
yeah. So I guess when it comes to Pesach, one of the things we should bear in mind is the freedom from the slavery that was our freedom was type of bought from us by Pharaoh by providing us food, bread,
Mm.
etc. And we're people were willing to. They didn't even have a concept, maybe, or they were willing to give it up so they have the free bread, as people do. There are people who are willing to do that. You know what I mean?
Give up their freedom for bread.
Give up that. People still do that.
Right.
They'll give up their freedom because you know they want the steady income, and it's always a bit of a challenge. And
Yeah.
so obviously we didn't get into it, but one could probably think of the fact that one of the terms used for receiving something without earning it, which is the whole idea of creation, some say, is called nahama de kisufa, bread of shame. That the
Yeah.
human being does not want to receive bread of shame. It's like bread is the term used, not just the gift of shame, but bread of shame.
Now, there is some, I think, one of the indications that you're approaching the time of Mashiach is that bread will grow on trees.
Hmm.
So that would imply we have to look into that because that would be problematic. We'd always want to have
Well,
to
no,
make
the
bread.
because bread started off the Gemara, which says that one of
Mm.
the various opinions what the fruit of Adam and Eve ate
Right,
was either etrog, which is why we do a mitzvah with it,
right.
or it was figs, which is why they used the fig leaves to cover themselves,
Could have
or
been
it was
wine.
grape juice, which is wine, right? Wine.
Yeah.
So that's why we do mitzvahs with wine. One opinion is that it
Mm.
was wheat. And the
Yeah,
Gemara says, well, what are you talking about? It says they ate from a tree, a fruit tree.
right.
The Gemara says at that time, wheat grew on trees. Now, the difference between fruit and wheat is that fruit almost always can just be taken and eaten. There's no preparation necessary. You may have to peel it, cut it,
Right, right,
but pretty much it's edible as is. So at
right.
that time, pre sin, so to speak, wheat or bread was edible as is. You could pull it off the tree.
But wouldn't you want that human component? The
But
partnership with Hashem, the
in
fact that
messianic
we're doing
times,
it.
that will be primarily in a more spiritual area. In other words, we still will perfect ourselves, but the perfection will be in very lofty spiritual areas, not in something as pathetic as food. So there we won't have to.
Spoken. I just wish people could have just a short video of you in different places where delicious food is available.
I do appreciate
I
delicious
want
food,
this way.
as
If
you
at
can
all
see.
possible, I would like that audio over just like a 30-second video
Of me at a
of you
schmorg, me at a
in different countries of the world sampling their delicious gastronomic offerings.
okay.
Nothing is base and lowly as food. Yeah, go ahead.
But you are correct. But in messianic times, we can
Yeah,
take all that energy and instead of directing it at the
I
creation
hear.
of food, we direct
Right.
it at the perfection of self.
For most people, that's essentially what happens now. We buy our
Yeah,
bread on a
right.
shelf. I mean, it's basically grows on trees. Yeah,
Basically, yeah.
yeah.
There is a breadfruit which is grows in the
I
Pacific.
heard it's not that
I
delicious.
haven't tried it.
You have to. I heard you have to develop a kind of
We have not done a tour of
liking
New
for it.
Guinea. We have not done a tour of New Guinea as
I
yet.
wouldn't jump into it. If you ever get to New Guinea, don't take a big chunk. Just try it a little bit first before you jump into it. That's
I had
what I
one
was
student
told.
who lived in New Guinea for a year, 2 years.
Seriously?
Yeshiva University. Yeah, he's actually right now living in Singapore. Family lives in Singapore, but he lived in New Guinea for his
And
father.
did he extol the breadfruit?
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, okay. So I hope everyone has a wonderful Pesach. If you're seeing this before Pesach, if you're seeing this
Right.
after, I hope you had a wonderful Pesach.
Right.
And a little bit about bread from us.
Right.
Go get
And
that bread.
if you do watch it before Pesach, make sure to put it away somewhere or sell it before Pesach. You do not want to watch this or listen to this on Pesach, do they? I
I,
don't know.
I don't know. I once gave just because I was in a mood at
Yeah.
one of the Pesach programs. I gave a class about the kashrus of whiskey.
Now that I imagine got a lot of people paying attention.
It
There's
did.
a lot of people that regularly would not pay attention to one, but that one, I think
I was
you.
just feeling a little cruel, but I felt that
I'm, I'm sure they had sorghum whiskey. We had
no,
a wine tasting like two
at that
years
time
ago,
didn't exist.
and the guy came with sorghum whiskey,
Yeah.
$100 a bottle.
I don't know how good that is. I'd be interested in trying it, but you never know.
Yeah.
Anyway, please, folks,
Okay.
if you enjoyed this, share it with others. So it'll be more than the about minion of people who watch this, the 10 or 15.
There's
Um,
never really 10 at the same time, though, so I don't think you
that's
can call
right.
it a minion.
Although
Can't call it a
I
minion.
did speak to some guy from Lakewood Yeshiva
Yeah.
who told me that he enjoys the podcast and many of his friends do. I said, really, a lot of them? He says, yeah. He says, we don't actually, just one person who has internet access downloads it and then he shares it with everyone else somehow.
Oh, so you think they might be listening in a group and they say Kaddish afterwards?
Well, I don't, yeah, maybe Kaddish on it. I don't know, but yeah, they maybe. So anyway, share, like, tell people about it and enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you very much for watching,
All right.
folks, and for
Be
listening.
well. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Be well. Bye bye.